Okay, so if the coefficient of our first term right here, the a, if it's positive, that means we're going to have a happy face. It's going to be opening up. This is for a greater than 0. And this point down here, which is the lowest most point, is going to be called our minimum. It's also called the vertex. So it's the vertex of your parabola. And in this case, it's going to be an absolute minimum. If the coefficient of our a is negative, we're going to have a sad face. We're going to be opening down. This is for a less than 0. My vertex is going to be at the very top of the parabola. So that's going to be where the vertex is. And that vertex is going to be an absolute maximum. Alrighty, and then we have two general forms for the equations for a parabola. We have the general form, which is this first form right here. And then we have what we call the standard form. So you might see your quadratics written in either form. Notice that in the first form, the general form, a cannot be equal to 0. If a is equal to 0, what happens to my function? First term goes away. What am I left over with? A linear function, right? Okay, so we definitely don't have that first term equal to 0. If we want to find the vertex, and our equation is given to us in the general form, the way we're going to find our vertex is we're going to take the coefficient of our x, which is b, take the opposite of it, and divide it by 2 times the coefficient of our x squared. So negative b over 2a. That gives me my x. So you might want to write your sentence stuff down. X is equal to negative b over 2a. Y is going to be found by putting in whatever you get from negative b over 2a into your function, wherever you have an x. So it would be a times negative b over 2a quantity squared plus b times negative b over 2a plus c. The axis of symmetry, and when we're talking about parabolas, our axis of symmetry is the vertical line that goes through the parabola and then also goes through the vertex. So this is your axis of symmetry. It goes through the vertical of your parabola, and the parabola is symmetrical about that line. So it's the equation of a vertical line. What is the equation of a vertical line? X equals something. Good. So down here, it's going to be equal to whatever the x coordinate of my vertex is. So x equals, and this is the x coordinate of your vertex. So it's nice to know what your axis of symmetry is, because then if you find points on one side of your parabola, you automatically have points on the other side due to symmetry. Okay, next thing is the standard form. And so you might see your equations in this form. And when they're in this form, to find our vertex, we're going to take whatever's inside the parentheses here, x minus h, and set it equal to 0. So we're taking whatever's inside the function, like we've done before, solving for x, and that will give us the x coordinate of our vertex. So x coordinate of your vertex. H is the x coordinate of your vertex. And then this k outside here, well, it's outside of the function. It's a straight shooter. That's going to be the y coordinate. So k is the y coordinate of your vertex. So just by looking at this equation, I know right away what the x and the y coordinate are of my vertex. That's what's nice about having it in this form. I can just look at this equation and go, oh, I know it's going to be either opening up or down. I know what my vertex is. This is good. And I can figure out axis of symmetry. All good. Up here, I have to put it into a formula. Not so nice. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. So we're going to go ahead and do some examples. And we need to find the x and y coordinates. We're going to be trying to graph these at some point. So we're going to need to find the x and y intercept coordinates for each of these equations. How do we find the x coordinates? X-vert or x-intercept coordinates? How do you find your x-intercepts? Set f of x equal to 0. Good. X-intercept. It's when f of x equals 0. So you need to solve that equation. Put in 0 for f of x. You're left over with 2x squared plus 3x plus 1. Now what? It's not called FOILing. You got the right idea. Factor. The first term is factors of 2. So the first term in each parenthesis has to be factors of 2. There's only 2 factors of 2. The last term is a sum. That means that you're going to have the same signs inside of here. Sum, same signs. What are those signs going to be?
Pluses.
And then you need factors of your last term. Go in here. What are the factors of 1?
1.
Shouldn't take you that long to factor this. Take each one of your factors, set them equal to 0. So take 2x plus 1, set it equal to 0. Take x plus 1, set it equal to 0. Solve for x. So your x-intercepts should have coordinates, what? So remember, if we're talking about intercepts, one of your coordinates is going to be 0. One of your coordinates is going to be 0. Okay, y-intercepts, how do we find them? It's when you're going to be looking for f of 0. You're going to be putting a 0 wherever you have an x. So into this equation, 2 times 0 squared plus 3 times 0 plus 1. Coordinates of your y-intercept. Now notice when I'm doing these problems, notice how I'm writing them as coordinate pairs. So whenever you see me say write them as coordinates, I want to know every point has 2 coordinates. Also notice what I'm doing. Circling my answers so you know what they are. Okay, what else are we supposed to do then? We're supposed to determine the vertex. How do we find our vertex? So look at your equation. Is it in the general form or is it in the standard form? It's in the general form. So we're going to use negative b over 2a to find our x-coordinate for our vertex. So x equals negative b over 2a. Negative b is going to be negative 3. And 2a is going to be 2 times 2. So we end up with negative 3/4. Then to find our y-coordinate, we need to take negative 3/4 and put it back in our x, into our function. So now you need to find what f of negative 3/4 is. Anna said she's coming up with negative 1/8. Anybody verify that? She is correct. So your vertex is going to have coordinates negative 3/4, negative 1/8. If you're having trouble with this, see me. Okay. Is my vertex a relative minimum or a relative maximum? Because it's opening up. Minimum. And then we're asked to graph the function, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we really don't have big points that we're dealing with. So I'm probably going to break my graph down a little bit into at least fourths. X equals negative 3/4. Remember, it's going to be the coordinate of your vertex. This is your axis of symmetry. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and graph. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and graph. And I have a y-intercept of 0, 1. And I have x-intercepts of negative 1/2, 0. So here's negative 1/2, 0. And I am at negative 1, 0. Okay. And then I have my vertex. Negative 3/4. That's over here. Down an 8, which is just going to be about right there. And then we're going to use our axis of symmetry for another point. So remember, the axis of symmetry is an invisible line that goes vertical through the parabola, through the vertex. And every point that's on the right should be on the left. So I have a point at 0, 1. I should also then have a point at what? So negative 1.5, 1. That's why we like the axis of symmetry. We don't have to find more points. We can use the ones we already have. And there's the graph of my function. Questions on that one? Alrighty, let's move on to the next one. The x-coordinate of my vertex is going to be, take whatever's inside the parentheses, set it equal to 0, 2. So the x-coordinate of my vertex is going to be 2. What's the y-coordinate going to be? 2. Whatever you have on the outside. Whatever you have on the outside here. So that's your vertex. What's my axis of symmetry going to be? An invisible vertical line. X equals 2, the x-coordinate of your vertex. Okay, how are we going to find the, let's do x-intercepts. Set what equal to 0? So we're going to take x, f of x, set it equal to 0, and we're going to solve negative 2 times x minus 2, quantity squared, plus 2. Be careful when you square your binomial. You should do that first, order of operations. Take care of those exponents first. Remember that when you're squaring a binomial, it might be beneficial for you to write it out. When you FOIL it correctly, you should come out with x squared minus 4x plus 4, and then plus 2. Multiplying everything by negative 2, you end up with negative 2x squared plus 8x minus 6. Okay, now what do we do? Factor, good. What are we going to factor?
Take out a 2.
Okay, Anna's saying let's take out a GCF of 2, and she just changed it to, let's take out a GCF of negative 2. And that'll change my sign on my first term. So I'm going to go with that. So factor out negative 2. What are you left over with? Minus 4x, good. Plus 3. So 0 equals negative 2 times x minus 3 times x minus 1. Take each one of these, set them equal to 0, 3, 0, and 1, 0.
What happens to negative 2?
It'll never be equal to 0, will it? Negative 2, you could divide both sides by negative 2 if you wanted to get rid of it, if it makes you that uncomfortable. But the only thing, when we're talking about factoring, set each of your factors equal to 0. Negative 2 will never be equal to 0. Okay, and then we need to find our y. And we find those by doing what? By saying f of 0. Put in a 0 where you have an x. You should become negative 6. And the coordinates then are going to be 0, negative 6. Those are your y, that's your y-intercept. So let's see, we found the coordinates of the intercepts. We figured out the vertex. Oh, is my vertex going to be a maximum or a minimum?
It's maximum.
Why? You have a negative sitting in front. Means it's unhappy. It's going to be sad. So it's going to be opening down. So yes, you're going to have a maximum vertex. Always start with the negative first. So